My name is Jesse Wieland. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Associate Director at the Office of National Fellowships, which right across the hall. Sam, would you like to quickly introduce yourself and let me actually get your picture up so the people attending can also see you. But go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sam Beal. My pronouns are he, they, and I am the program coordinator at the Office of National Fellowships, and I work with Gilman students on their applications. So excited to work with some of y'all.
Yeah, we're stoked to have Sam in the office because for the last 9 years, Gilman has been one of the scholarships that I'm extremely passionate about and have largely been leading on my own. And so having Sam in the office just means we get to support more amazing students like all of you. And learning more about this opportunity, yes, but also our office works with so many other fellowships. So to kind of briefly touch on, hello, welcome. Actually, let me get this clicker working again. Just to briefly, there we go, touch on a little bit more about our office. How many of you are first year students? Excellent. Okay, great. Second years? Third years? Hey, okay, awesome. So the Office of National Fellowships, we work with students from their very first semester at Florida State University, and I have students that I have been working with now 5, 6, 7 more years as alumni. And for students that are in graduate school that I've worked with as undergraduates here, like we're still happy to work with you. My point is, our office is here to work with you at all stages of your education to help you find the scholarship, the fellowship, the internship, the graduate school program, or whatever it is that is going to enhance what you are studying, what you are researching, or the skills that you're hoping to develop during your time here at Florida State or afterwards. So we work with you, Sam and I, and Bonnie and Craig, who aren't here today. We're a very small office, so just by meeting the two of us, you've met half the office. But we sit down with you and we work with you on your essays and make sure that they are as competitive as possible. We know this fellowship writing process is very different from what you have done in high school. And so our hope is that, well, at least my hope for all of you is that your undergraduate experience isn't like mine, where you wrote one personal statement when you applied to Florida State University and got in that was about yourself. And then I didn't write another one until I was applying to graduate school. Hopefully these processes at the very least, it forces you to stop and take stock of what you were doing as an undergraduate, to kind of make meaning of these experiences, to connect them to the goals that you have, whether those be academic or professional goals. And so to kind of touch on this nebulous term, what is a fellowship? I think the easiest way to describe it is that it's a scholarship with a learning outcome. So by the end of that experience, and that experience is by and large fully funded, you will have learned, have studied, have created something that again is developing those skill sets that I mentioned that might be useful for your career, for your graduate school education, or maybe it's a research project or an internship that's relevant as well. That's going to help build your resume, help you learn more about the communities you'd like to work with as a professional. So obviously this one is going to focus on one very particular scholarship, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens of different fellowships that we work with on a regular basis. And then every year I have a student that brings a new opportunity that maybe their professor or peer recommended to them. And it's like, hey, can we apply to this? And the answer is yes. So fellowship promotion, that's what we're here to do today, is what our office does. We want to make students like yourself more aware of the opportunities available to you as a college student. I would also, and we'll talk about this at the very end of the presentation, if you follow us on social media, on Instagram, or if you follow us on LinkedIn, we just recently deleted our Facebook and it was a very euphoric feeling. So I hope all of you have that experience. I'm kidding, but we also just weren't engaging with students on that platform anymore, so we got rid of it. But if you follow us, my point is that we post about these workshops, but we also post about mini alumni talks that we have at the beginning, or it was at the end of the summer. We actually just did, so if you follow us on YouTube, we actually had 2 different alumni panels of Gilman scholars, Florida State alum, CARE alum, who received these fellowships anywhere as recently as 2 years ago, all the way back to 7 or 8 years ago, that are now firmly entrenched in their careers and spoke about how this experience was transformative for them. So my point is, we have these types of talks and conversations all the time. So we also identify applicants. All of you here are potential applicants for this scholarship and many others. Don't fall into the trap of kind of reading these fellowship descriptions and then creating this image for yourself of like, oh, well, that is a Gilman scholar, or that is what they're looking for, and that's not me. Brief short story. I don't know, how many of you heard of the Rhodes Scholarship? Are you familiar? It's for graduate funding at Oxford. They select about 32 Americans yearly. It's one of the more prestigious awards that we work with. One of our endorsees actually this year, meaning endorsed by Florida State University. I had a conversation with him 4 years ago when he was a freshman that was just like, I think I want to do this. And so it's like, okay, and so 4 years later, he has 8 letters of recommendation, a stellar application, everything that he needs to be successful at Oxford. So it's really hard to kind of picture yourself where you are right now to where you hope to be. But again, that's what we're here to help you do. And so Sam and I and Bonnie and Craig, we all mentor you through these application process. We know the essays are challenging. And we know a lot of these deadlines happen at the same time while you're a full-time student, while you might be holding internships or jobs on campus. So we know it's a lot. But again, that's why we're here to help. I might circle back to some of this at the end, but I've already been kind of touching on this. The benefit of working with our office is that these applications, like I said, they force you to stop and take stock of where you are in your education, what you want out of your education, where you see this education taking you. And so I think there's a lot of intrinsic value to just putting yourself through that process. Improving your writing and communication skills. The nice thing about Gilman is that there are no letters of recommendation required for you to apply. You just need to have an idea of this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. And if you can tell me that story in detail, and also this is who I am, that is often more than enough to get you nominated for this scholarship. But many of the other processes that we, like I just mentioned, Rhodes, for example, that requires an interview, a nomination process that requires multiple letters of recommendation. So my point is, be building these networks on and off campus through these fellowships, be going to office hours, be talking to your faculty, be talking to your PI if you're interested in research. But you'll find that Gilman is asking you very specific questions, but those questions are the same that you're going to answer for many other fellowships. It's who are you? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do this? Where do you see yourself going? If you can do it for Gilman, you can do it for any other. Any questions about ONF or fellowships broadly speaking before we move forward?
I was going to have a question on the Gilman.
Yeah.
Will you have to already be accepted into a program to apply to it, or can you?
That's a great question. I'll touch on that in just a moment. But the question was, if you couldn't hear, do you need to be accepted into your program? The short answer is no. But we'll talk about some of those caveats moving forward. But generally speaking, okay, so Gilman is one of many scholarships under the IIE umbrella, which stands for the Institute for International Education. IIE's entire mission is to help American college students access international programs, opportunities, experiences, to learn about other people, other languages, other cultures, and help better prepare you for your career, wherever that may be. So Gilman is about like 20 years old. I think they recently celebrated their 20th anniversary. And it was created because IIE was seeing that many students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds were not applying to their scholarships for no other reason than I couldn't afford it. And so they wanted to make that point of access, I guess, much lower, much easier. Ignore my analogy. The point is Gilman wanted to make finances not a reason why students weren't applying to study abroad programs. So generally speaking, just kind of the blanket, like if I say Gilman Scholarship, what I'm often referring to is this baseline $5,000 up to $5,000. Usually students from FSU fall into that $3,500 to $5,000 range. That you can apply towards any program of your choosing. That can be an internship program, that could be a traditional study program, say I'm taking classes abroad. It could be a research opportunity, or it could be a cultural exchange opportunity, not necessarily classes, but Florida State has a great example called Beyond Borders. I can talk a little bit more about that later. But Gilman also has a few different caveats. They recently added a STEM fellowship. So if you are in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and you're doing research abroad, they have this scholarship that qualifies you for up to $6,000 instead of $5,000. If you are studying a critical need language during your time abroad, critical need language defined as the ones that you see listed here, they are critical because so few universities and colleges have language programs or offer coursework in these. But many of these scholarships, the Critical Language Scholarship, the Gilman Scholarship, the Boren Scholarship, to name a few, have a lot of government funding that would send you abroad to study these. So you would qualify for up to $8,000 of funding if your program allows you to study one of these languages. And for Gilman, the nice thing is you don't need to come in with experience in the language. You just need to understand why I'm studying this language and how it fits into my academic and my professional future. Okay. There is, and I think it might be on a future slide, but I'll talk about it now. There is also the Gilman McCain Scholarship. It is exactly the same as the Gilman Scholarship. The only difference is you need to be the dependent or the spouse of an active duty military member, and you don't have to be receiving a Pell Grant specifically, but you do need to be receiving some sort of need-based aid. So, eligibility for Gilman, you need to be a US citizen. If you do not have citizenship, please contact me. We have a laundry list of scholarships that you can apply to that do not require citizenship. But also as a Florida State student, you still have access to all of our scholarships and programs as a student here. So it doesn't mean you can't travel abroad. It doesn't mean you can't receive funding. But for this particular scholarship, because it's government funded, you do have to have citizenship. You need to be in good academic standing. Rarely has that ever been an issue for a student. Please talk to me or your advisor if you have any questions about that. But broadly speaking, you need to be qualified for the program that you are pursuing. But even having reviewed these at the national level, I've rarely had that been an issue. You need to be receiving a federal Pell Grant either at the time of application or during your experience abroad. So with the Gilman timeline, I'll talk more about it later, but you can apply early, meaning you can apply up to a full year in advance of when you would plan to actually study abroad. And I know that status can change. It's not uncommon. I'm currently talking to students where they're like, I qualified last year, I don't qualify this year, I might qualify next year. So if that's you, again, please talk to us. And to answer your question, you either need to be in the process of applying to or accepted to a program abroad. What that means is, so if I'm applying for this October 10th deadline that we have coming up next month, likely most international programs don't have deadlines until mid or late fall or even the beginning of spring. So what you're pitching to Gilman, so say October 10th, I'm planning on summer 2025. I am planning on going to the broad curriculum program through international programs at Florida State University in Valencia, Spain. Cool, that's awesome. I won't find out if I've been accepted until the end of the fall, but what I pitched to Gilman is this is my plan. These are the courses that I'm taking. This is where I'm going. This is how I hope to engage with the culture, blah, 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 blah. And that's what Gilman invests in. If I'm selected as a nominee for Gilman, which would happen by the end of the fall semester, but say, that program in Valencia fills up. I can submit a program change to Gilman to accommodate the new program that I want to do that I've been accepted to. It doesn't impact my funding. I'm just updating Gilman on the location, the timeline, and all of that. So Gilman is very flexible. In this last one, the program does need to have a travel advisory of level 1 or 2. If you Google US Department of State Travel Advisory, it'll take you exactly to the website that I'm referring to. The vast majority of countries that you might be looking to traveling to are a level 1 or 2. The one thing to be aware of is that some countries might be a level 2, but then there'll be a region of the country that is a level 3 or a level 4. So your program can't take place there, but it can still take place in the country. But again, something to talk to your advisor about. I've already mentioned the Gilman McCain Scholarship. But before I talk about the selection criteria, does anybody have a quick question about eligibility? Yes.
I'm not sure if this is too specific of a question, but is there a certain number of scholarships given?
So there isn't, the question is, are there a certain number of Gilman scholarships? The answer is yes, but it's in the thousands that they distribute nationally. And Gilman does have bipartisan support. It's something that they increase the funding for every single year. There is no cap on X number of Florida State students can be nominated for the Gilman Scholarship. And so I always encourage the students that I'm working with is work together, make each other's applications better. There's no one saying that you can't both be nominated. And so typically, the national acceptance rate, this is probably more than you asked, but I'm going to tell you anyways, is usually around like 22, 23, 24%. Which is much better. I know it doesn't sound high, but it's much better than many fellowships that we work with. But students that work with ONF, our office, have between like a 50 and 60% acceptance rate. So again, we're good at our job. Please come and talk to us. Please come and talk to us. I'm glad that you're here. And part of that is because I have been on these review committees 5 times for Gilman and many others. Bonnie's been on this committee twice. Sam is signing up to be on this committee for this upcoming cycle. So I've read hundreds of applications, not just the ones that I worked with from Florida State. So we're happy to tell you what does make your application competitive so it increases your chances of being selected. Questions before I move on? So to kind of,
Oh wait, I did.
yeah.
So say if I'm planning to apply for like study abroad in like 2 years, would you recommend me doing this like immediately or waiting a while?
There are things I might recommend in the meantime before you study abroad, like other programs at Florida State or other domestic experiences, things like that. For Gilman, you can only receive Gilman once. There are other fellowships where you can receive them multiple times. I would look at the date that you plan to go, and I would apply to the earliest possible deadline because, and this is in future slides, but the way Gilman works is I'm applying to this cycle, October 10th of this semester. That would be for a program, spring or summer or fall 2025. So if I apply and I get it, great. I have the entire spring semester to budget, and then I go during the summer. And if I apply and I don't get it, I just reapply in March for that same summer. So you kind of have like a 2-for-1 chance to get it. Does that make sense? And
The
then
October 10th is the earliest one.
for summer, if I plan to study abroad summer or fall 2025, this fall deadline is like the early deadline.
Okay.
Now, if I apply in March, that is for summer or fall 2025 or spring 2026. You know, so it kind of leapfrogs every single cycle. So if you're planning to study abroad in 2 years, you know, then like, I'm not gonna sit here and try to do, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, I would apply the earliest you possibly can.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Would the Gilman Scholarship still be applied to people who go to things like CLS where the cost is already covered?
That's a good question. I'm glad to hear you've been doing your research into different fellowships. So Gilman scholarship funding can be stackable with other scholarships that you might receive, but not through like other IIE programs. So if you apply to the critical language scholarship, for example, it's a fully funded experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're gonna pay for everything, they'll pay for your travel, they'll pay for your cost of living. And I think the smart thing to do there would then to be like, kind of back pocket Gilman and save it for maybe a complimentary or additional experience as an
For like the
undergraduate.
following year?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, but they would still give you the money.
So for Gilman, you would have to decline the award to take the critical language scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And I would recommend doing that because the CLS acceptance rate is about like 5 to 10%. It's very competitive.
Yeah.
So if you get that, it's like, yeah, take that because your odds of getting Gilman, like, I mean, we'll talk, I'm kind of getting into the weeds, but I think there is an effective, like smart way to approach it. But my recommendation for many students is like, don't put all your eggs into any one basket, apply to multiple opportunities. And it's not uncommon for students to get multiple offers and have to choose, but that's a challenge, but it's a good boat to be in, And so, yes, great question. We'll talk more about it. Now, just to keep, and we'll stop for questions in just a little bit, but the way the selection criteria works, this is kind of the dumbed down version of it. But first and foremost, academic preparedness, impact to student trajectory. That's what I'm talking about up here for undergraduates in good standing. The word to write down or to remember is congruency. It's like, okay, so based on the candidate profile, based on the essays, based on everything that I've read, do I believe this student is capable of now, for some applicants going to this country they've never been to before, completely new environment, new culture, do I believe they will be successful? I know that's proven in many different ways throughout your application, but congruency, they're looking how all these pieces work together. Diversity of background and experience, what that essentially means, they are just looking for you to tell a story. Like, I want to know more about you as a person. One of the kind of great equalizer here is that everyone applying is receiving a federal Pell Grant. Everyone applying has financial need. So how do you differentiate yourself from the pack? I want to know about those formative experiences, not necessarily from childhood, but maybe because some students have really compelling stories to share. I want to know about what you've done in high school, perhaps, or what you've done in college. Every applicant is different. And so again, I think that's why the benefit of working with an advisor is you can spitball some of these ideas with us and we can help you. For some students, maybe tell this story or craft this narrative that maybe they haven't written about before, but it's really relevant for what they're wanting to do abroad. The destination, what that means is American study abroad programs primarily exist in Western Europe. You're looking at the United Kingdom, you're looking at France, you're looking at Germany, you're looking at Spain, you get my point. And the majority of Gilman nominees are sent there because that's what students have access to. So Gilman reviewers are not going to, be critical of someone who applies to the United Kingdom because it's the United Kingdom, because that might be all they have. What this means is for an applicant who puts together a compelling application, but maybe they are going to Southeast Asia, or maybe they are going somewhere in the continent of Africa, or maybe they are going to Eastern Europe, places where students don't commonly travel to for these study programs. There's like a small plus on your application because Gilman really wants to diversify where students have access to, and they also know those programs tend to be more expensive. The flights there tend to be more expensive. But impact to community, this will come up more when we're talking about the essays later on. This is essentially essays 2 and 3. They're looking both at what is the impact that you're making to the community that you are going to, and then what is the impact you are making to the community that you return to. So cultural exchange. The last two are really only relevant if you're applying to a critical need language award. Why do you need to study this language? What is it? I had students, for example, that have talked about, well, yeah, I've been taking these classes, but I have not learned the student was in the medical field. I have not learned the technical jargon that I need in order to work in this field. Like I can ask where the bathroom is, but it's like, I can't talk about, like someone's blood pressure, or these other terms, anyways. And then the supplemental STEM award, exactly you can assume, why are you doing this research? What is valuable about this project? And I saw that there are some questions in the chat, maybe. Sam, I don't know if you've handled those.
I'm handling those right now. We've got some questions that'll probably be answered through the coming up slides, but yes.
Cool, awesome, thank you. application components. In the grand scheme of things, what you are asked to write for Gilman genuinely is not that bad. It is single space 2.5 pages. I mean, I've cranked out more in an evening as an undergraduate. I would not recommend it, you know, but it is possible. But that we are talking about Gilman now, you know, 5-6 weeks in advance, whatever it is, because we want to work with you and make this process as least or as we don't want it to be stressful. We want you to be able to take time and really build these applications. So what 7,000 characters equates to is about 1.5 pages, single space. 3,000 characters, roughly about half a page. 2,000 characters, about a third. 1,000 characters, about a fourth. So if you're applying to, you know, the most you're gonna write is like 3 pages for this application. Everyone in their applications are all different, but I usually recommend starting with this statement of grant purpose for a few reasons. It's the broad overview of what you are doing, and I think knowing where you come from, what you're doing, and where you hope to be, it makes writing about this mutual understanding, this cultural exchange, it makes writing about your follow-on service project so much easier because you know the details. So essentially, when you're reading the prompt, another piece of advice, if you're taking notes, is almost never, at least from my experience as a fellowship advisor, should you answer a prompt in the order that the questions are asked, because the people who craft these prompts, they can ask it however they want, but they're looking for a very specific set of criteria. When you go onto Gilman's website and you read the prompt for essay 1, you'll see the very first bullet point is tell me about your goals and where do you hope to be? But as a reviewer, all I've read up to that point is, okay, Susie Q goes to Florida State University and is majoring in civil engineering and wants to go to France. And then the first thing that I read is like, all about what you hope to achieve as a professional, as a graduate student, but I know nothing else about you. It really doesn't make sense to me. It's like, okay, I mean, that sounds cool. I hope so. So what I would recommend doing when you read this prompt is start from the very bottom and work your way up. Because what it's essentially asking is like, tell me a story about yourself, about your experience. And so the way that I would bookend essay 1 is start by talking about yourself. Give me a formative experience, give me an anecdote, or tell me a story that connects to what you want to do or where you want to go. So then when you make that transition, then it's like, okay, so now I am participating in the Center for Global Engagement's business program in South Korea. And here's all of what I am doing. And then the body of your first essay is all about the country, the program, the coursework. Give me painfully like the details that I need to understand what you are doing. There's nothing more deflating as a reviewer than, you know, I get this interesting profile of an applicant, and then when they get to the program, they're just like, I'm going to South Korea. And that's it. And I joke, but that's literally it. And some of these applications, the ones that I can't score very highly because I can't fill in the blanks for you. You know, so my point is, once you've identified a program that you want to participate in, contact that advisor. If it's through international programs, great. Contact Beth, contact Jewel, contact any of the staff that are over there. If it's through the Center for Global Engagement, contact Leanne. Because over the next 4 to 5 weeks, you know, I can't get you information about the program that you're doing. But if you can get that and bring it to me, we can fold it in and incorporate it into your essays. The last piece, and I know I'm harping on this, but trust me, last year, half of the applicant pool that I read was AI generated. And please don't send me your ChatGPT essays. That is not what we do here. I don't care if you're a good writer. I just want you to be authentic. And then, so if you tell me that background, that personal story, if you tell me about your program, then that's where you should conclude with the goals and the aspirations and the plans that you have. That to me is a very linear narrative. It makes sense. And just to quickly touch on these, and I'll pause again for questions, building mutual understanding, you know, so if I'm going to a part of the world and I've had students in this situation where they were literally the first American that this community had ever hosted, that comes with a lot of responsibility. And so you kind of, in this essay, what they're asking you to do is really reflect on the identities that you hold, the experiences that you bring. What does it mean to represent, whether you want to or not, represent this country abroad? And so I don't want you to talk about the hot dogs and 4th of July and all these different I mean, if you want to, great, but I wouldn't recommend it. Be a little bit deeper than that. And then the follow-on project, you need to do 3 things. You need to identify a community or organization that you want to work with, how you are going to work with them, and what the outcome is. So I am a Florida State University student. I'm in the CARE program. I want to collaborate with some of my peers who studied abroad to give a panel talk or presentation because I want my peers to maybe have a greater sense of efficacy when it comes to study abroad. I want them to understand what options are available to them. That's very basic, but trust me, with a little bit more detail and personality, that can be a project. Yes.
Would the project have to be like on campus or can we take it beyond into the community?
The project does not need to be on campus. It does not need to be affiliated with Florida State. I've had students that have, through their study abroad program, did research on sea turtles abroad, which to me sounds sick. And if you can find that project, you should do it. But their follow-on project was, well, I want to go down to Wakulla County. I want to work with kids to help them better understand our environment. I want them to understand the species that live in this area, and I want them to get interested in conservation and other topics. It was relevant to what they were studying, so they are able to find congruency. Now, what you can find on Gilman's website, they have a list of broad but possible ideas for what a project can be. I've had students go back to their former high schools because they want to talk about applying to college. They also want to talk about other things. And oh yeah, by the way, I studied abroad and here was a scholarship that I received. Other questions about the essays?
We have a question in the chat here. Kaylee was asking, should students wait to schedule a meeting until after they have a draft of their first essay?
Not necessarily. Meetings look different. So if you have essays, please contact Sam and I. We would be happy to sit down and edit those. Usually, we ask if you can send those essays to us 24 hours in advance. That really helps ensure that I have comments and notes ready for you so we can sit down, talk about those, and then kind of wash, rinse, repeat. If you are more at the, I don't know how to find a program, that's great. Sam, myself, we have like a list of links and websites that you can go to and find something. My advice is start with Florida State University. Like, I'm not just blowing smoke. When you compare Florida State nationally to other institutions, their study abroad programs are significantly better and they have much more than what other universities offer. So I would say, like, literally about 80 to 90% of the students that I work with are studying through Florida State University. And then we have about that 10 to 20% where, you know, they have niche interests or languages that they're studying or other ideas. Like you mentioned, language fellowships, Florida State doesn't have. I have a student in Indonesia right now studying Bahasa. They are not studying through Florida State because we don't have that. You know, but that's where I think it's appropriate to go outside of Florida State. You can look at Arcadia Abroad, AIFS, Omprecash. Like, there's a lot of great resources or IIEpassport.org where you can go and search, find a program, maybe study with another university. So wherever you're at, please feel free to contact us. We'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
Would you say it's too late in the process for the October 10th deadline?
So it is. I always caution whether or not I share this story. I'm going to share it anyways because I think it's kind of funny, but it proves my point. Like years ago, I had a student of mine that I had worked with for multiple years, and she knew better to, like, you know, meaning she knew to contact me early. She knew she should apply early. And I saw her on a Friday during the fall, and she was like, hey, and we had talked about this previously. So again, this is why I say she knew better. And she was like, hey, so I got accepted to that program in Nepal and I want to study, I want to apply to Gilman, and the Gilman deadline was the following Tuesday. And so the conversation essentially was like, dude, that's really cool. Like, I'm really proud of you, but also, how dare you, you know, but in, like, I'm kidding, you know, it's like, well, what I told her was, well, this is what you're doing all weekend. You're going to send me your drafts on Monday and they better be full drafts and detailed. And she did, and I edited them, and then she submitted, what the deadline is for students on the East Coast, it's like 2 AM, you know, because it's technically midnight Pacific time, or 3 AM, whatever it is. So she submitted at like 2 AM, she got it, she went to Nepal, she had a sick time, so I've seen this application completed in 72 hours. Do I recommend that? Absolutely not. This student had a track record of applying to these fellowships. She had written these essays in the past. And so if you can get information about the program that you are doing, you should prioritize that and not the essays. Like go talk to IP, go talk to CGE, whomever it is. And if you can get that, we can craft this application in a week if we have to. But you have, I think from today, I think it's exactly 1 month. You have 1 month minus 1 day. And that's plenty of time if you make this part of your, you know, just kind of like weekly, you know, I'm doing homework, I'm studying, but also maybe I'm spending time drafting, you know, a paragraph or two. So it's a good question. You still have time. And even if you apply in the fall and you're like, well, this is a completed application, is it my best work? Maybe not. That doesn't mean it won't be selected, and you still have the spring deadline as like a safety net. So it doesn't mean not to try, but yeah. So that's kind of a good segue kind of into this general timeline. So the first step, obviously, you need to develop your essays. You also need to include your transcripts. Please do not pay for them. You can use your unofficial transcripts, but prioritize getting information about the program. Talk to a student who has maybe studied there before. I can connect you to alumni that I've worked with. You know, get the information that you need, and then if you have questions, you do have to list a study abroad and a financial aid advisor in your application. I will tell you exactly who you need to list. You submit everything by October 10th. Your advisors, the reason you listed them is they need to certify that yes, the student receives a Pell Grant, and yes, the student did not just make up this program, it is real, they have applied to it or they are planning to apply to it. And then once that is certified, they have a week. You don't need to worry about this. I have never had a student's application not get certified. I have called advisors in the past and maybe mildly harassed them over email, but it's fine. They got the certification in and it all worked out. And so then your application is complete. And then it goes to review committees. Another thing that I would remember is when you are writing this application, if you say any acronym unique to Florida State, and CARE is a common example. I don't know, me being anonymous national reviewer, I don't know what CARE is. I don't know that acronym. I don't know those students. I don't know that organization or what it provides. So remind yourself that when I'm writing, I need to be excruciatingly detailed about what these organizations are, the students that they serve, and how I hope to use these resources. Question? This is a little fun graphic that Sam put together that really shows there's no idea that is too far-fetched for what Gilman can provide, as long as you can make a case for why this is relevant to what I want to do. These are all the locations that FSU students through Gilman have studied in. You can't see it, but I am always trying to get someone to go to New Zealand. I just want somebody to take a picture with a Kiwi. That is a personal goal of mine. If that's you, please talk to me. The point is, over 150 students have received funding through this scholarship, and I believe that spans like the last 12 years, at least since I've been able to like track data. But yeah, let's see. Like I already mentioned, these are the actual statistics because I keep track of all of that because I don't know, I find it interesting. Of the students who have applied solo, and what you'll see is the students that apply by themselves, and you know, I think that just speaks to the quality of a Florida State student. They're still doing pretty damn well. They're receiving it at about the national average. But for students that have applied to Florida State, I'm sorry, applied through ONF, you're more than doubling your chances. You have like a 2.5 time more chance of being selected. So there's really no harm in working with us. We are here to help you. I know it's intimidating to share narratives or experiences that might be personal with someone that you don't really know. Trust me, if you knew more about my background, you're like, why am I trusting this man with my life? But we do pretty good, is my point. So anyways, programs, the gilmanscholarship.org, obvious place to start. Go in and they have a lot of different resources. They have vlogs and blogs and alumni ambassadors that you can reach out to for insight. But again, I have over like a decade's worth of students that have done this program that I can also connect you to. So talk to the people who have been there before. It makes it a little bit less intimidating. And then this is this is kind of what I was mentioning earlier, in that Sam and I can point you towards programs if you don't know where to start. International programs and global exchanges through Florida State are more your traditional, I'm taking classes abroad. They have some major specific programs. They also have very broad programs and anything in between. Really the only difference in my mind is that, like, if this is like your first time studying abroad, excellent. But if you're like, maybe I'm a little bit apprehensive, maybe I want to be at an FSU study center, I want to be with, some other Florida State students until I can kind of build that confidence. Great. Look at international programs. They have more than that. They have internships and other smaller programs, but I think being at an FSU study center is really dope. I've been to the one in London. It's really, really cool. They're a lot of fun. Global exchanges, that is more of the I feel like an international student on this college campus type of vibe. It's a little bit more immersive. If you feel comfortable with that, they have fantastic programs. It doesn't mean you're the only Florida State student. Maybe you're like, there's like a group of 5 business students studying in South Korea. Maybe you're a part of a small group, but that's kind of the vibe. Global Scholars, that deadline is actually coming up in November. My colleague Warren Oliver and Carrie Wall, they both work at the Center for Undergraduate Research and Academic Engagement. But Global Scholars is a really great education program. So you apply in the fall, you take your course during the spring. Another thing I want to mention is if you're in the CARE program, you might qualify for additional funding, and it's usually enough, like $1,500. It's like enough to pay for a plane ticket. And again, that you can stack with your Gilman funding, like I mentioned. But anyways, Global Scholars will help prepare you for that international experience. They cover topics, as important, but pragmatic as, like, how do I navigate loneliness and isolation abroad? Like I mentioned, I've had a Gilman Scholar study in like rural northern Vietnam. She was the first American, the first Black woman in that area. And she had a great experience, but there was a lot that she needed to prepare for that experience. But then they also will talk to you about, okay, if you're doing an internship, like, how do we make sure that that work is sustainable, it's culturally conscious, it's helpful to this community and not harmful to this community? As you can tell, I'm a huge fan of Global Scholars. I think you should do it. It also accommodates domestic experiences. So if you're not planning to go abroad yet, but you're looking for that type of program, I would look into it. Beyond Borders, they have a really cool program. They have a week-long program in Jamaica and then a 3-week or 4-week program in Germany over the summer, where essentially the focus is cultural exchange. So I am part of a group. We are hosting college students from those countries. During, like they come to Florida State for a week, there are other events and things around the state of Florida that you might go to with them, and then they host you on the back end. So it is learning about different higher education systems. The benefit of that, I can't speak to Jamaica, but Bonnie and I were in Germany this past summer, and they are actively looking for American college students that want to go there for graduate school. You don't need to know German. So the point is, it's a really cool experience. AIFS, Ompercash, and Arcadia Abroad are usually the 3 go-to. If you can't find something through Florida State, I would recommend those. But again, reach out to Sam and I, or Sam, if you want to put those links into the chat. And then if you all want to contact me, I can get it to you. Otherwise, schedule an appointment. You can email, and it might be the next slide. You can email Sam, you can email me directly. Bonnie also works with us on Gilman. You can also email our general ONF email that goes to all of us. And if you say like, hey, these are the days and times that I'm available and I would like to talk about blah, 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 then like, okay, we'll get back to you and we'll get something scheduled.